Okay, so you've sent over some really detailed sources on these ongoing protests in Sindh about the new canals. It's definitely more than just a localized thing. We're seeing actions all over.
Yeah, quite a range of actions.
So for this deep dive, let's try and unpack what's really at the heart of this movement. Looking at the specific actions you've flagged, what's driving all this?
Well, the first thing that really leaps out is just how widespread the disruption is. I mean, the sources talk about highway blockades across, well, a huge part of Sindh.
Which district specifically?
We're seeing reports from Karachi, Jamshoro, Dadu, Shikarpur, Matiari, Khairpur, Larkana, and Thada. And critically, these aren't back roads.
No, these are the big ones.
Exactly. The national and Indus highways, these are vital transport links for the whole country. Blocking them like this,
Yeah.
it suggests something pretty significant is going on, a deep grievance.
Right. And let's maybe focus on one event you highlighted that lawyer sit-in, on the Baburlu bypass in Khairpur.
Yes, that's a key one. It's apparently entered its third day now.
Yeah. And what's really striking is the local support they seem to have. Food, water. I even saw mention of a medical camp because of the heat.
That's right.
That kind of solidarity, it really tells you something about how this issue is hitting home locally, doesn't it?
It really does. It points towards something maybe broader than just this one project. Perhaps issues around, resources, provincial rights, but there's also a darker element reported.
The alleged threats.
Yes, the intimidation claims.
Hmm.
The legal fraternity is saying their camp was actually targeted.
Mm.
Gunfire, apparently, from an SUV and 2 unmarked double cabs.
Wow. And they're saying this was meant to scare them off.
That's the claim. And they also mentioned the police investigation isn't really going anywhere, which adds to the tension.
And this wasn't the first time, according to them. Advocate Amir Nawaz Warich was quoted.
Correct. He stated these were the same individuals, allegedly, who had threatened them before. It adds a layer of, alleged premeditation.
And they have some proof this time, video.
They say they recorded the vehicles around 6 a.m. and apparently showed spent bullet shells to the media. So it's moving beyond just claims. It feels quite tangible.
That definitely changes the dynamic from just a political disagreement.
Absolutely. And this alleged incident seems to have, if anything, hardened their position. They gave the federal government a 72-hour deadline.
Which ends today, April 21st.
Exactly. The demand is clear. Cancel the canals project. And they're talking about next steps if that demand isn't met.
Escalation, essentially. What are they considering?
Things like blocking railway tracks or maybe a complete boycott of all courts in Sindh. In fact, the Sindh Bar Council has already announced a province-wide court boycott for today.
So the legal community is really mobilizing, but it's not just them, is it? There was also a big strike.
That's right, a province-wide shutterdown strike. This is called by the Jeay Sindh Qaumi Movement, the JSQM.
And it affected quite a few areas.
Yes, major divisions: Hyderabad, Mirpurkhas, Nawab Shah, Sukur, Larkana. Pretty widespread. The JSQM chairman, Sanan Qureshi, actually framed it as a referendum against the canals.
A referendum, strong words. It suggests this goes beyond just specific groups, tapping into wider public feeling, maybe about water rights historically in Sindh.
It certainly seems that way. When a political movement can call for that level of shutdown, it suggests the issue resonates deeply with a lot of people.
Right.
It's interesting seeing these different tactics, legal pressure, public strikes, all aimed at the same goal.
And what about the government? Any response mentioned in the sources?
There was a statement from State Minister Kildas Koistani. He seemed to acknowledge that Sindh's objections were justified.
Okay, acknowledgement is one thing.
Right. He mentioned upcoming meetings between the federal and provincial governments to find an amicable resolution. He also, interestingly, dismissed any PPP worker involvement in some earlier incident involving eggs and tomatoes, maybe trying to keep political factions separate.
So, sort of an initial outreach, an olive branch maybe.
Perhaps. But, given how strong the protesters' stance is, especially, that lawyers' ultimatum expiring today, and the scale of that strike, you have to wonder if just acknowledgement and promises of meetings will be enough right now.
Yeah, the core issue, the canals themselves and the threat people perceive, that hasn't really been addressed yet, has it?
Not fundamentally, no.
Okay, so let's recap quickly. We've got these major highway blockades, a really determined lawyers sit-in that's facing alleged intimidation, a ticking clock on their ultimatum threatening more disruption, and this big public shutter-down strike showing widespread discontent.
A very complex and escalating situation. The pressure is definitely building from multiple angles.
Which brings us to the key question for everyone listening. When you consider all these different forms of protest, stacking up the blockades, the sit-in, the potential court boycotts, the strike, and you weigh that against the government's initial, maybe cautious response, what do you think happens next? What's likely to be the crucial development here, and which factors will ultimately push this towards some kind of resolution?